Upstairs at Froelich, show 207, reel 1.
I Dig a Pygmy by Charles Hawtrey on the Death Aids. Phase 1, in which Doris gets her oats.
I can hear your fucking radio, you stupid shit!
Wasn't this, would you say, that this was the right time for the Beatles to quit? Based on the movie, you watched the movie, we know what they did, and then we know what they were going to do after it. Wouldn't you say that Let It Be was just the right time for this band to give it up and break up?
Well, what you gotta remember about Let It Be is that even though it was the last album released, it was not the last album they recorded.
Right.
Because
which means they kind of overextended themselves a little bit with Abbey Road, right?
Well, you know what? I can tell you my thoughts and all this. So watching this documentary, you can easily tell that all four of these guys want to go do their own thing. Because
they're very uncomfortable with each other.
Yeah, they're very uncomfortable. And then the whole reason they even did Abbey Road was because when they finished Let It Be, there were still mixing issues. There was a lot of mastering problems. You know, George Martin did a mix that they didn't like. No, it was Glenn Johns. Excuse me. It was Glenn Johns did a mix that he didn't like. I think Martin did a mix, and the Beatles hated it. And that's when they brought in Phil Spector to basically put it all together. And while this was going on, they said, well, you know what?
I think
let's
three
go
of
do
them,
let's just go do. Let's just go do the album we should have fucking done with the producer we should have fucking done it with, and get it right.
Really
and that's why Abbey Road's I'm sorry, Abbey Road's the better record.
They completely dissed George Martin in the process when they were working on Let It Be. They wanted it to be like this. They wanted to do everything live, right? But then the other three Beatles, minus Paul, brought in Phil Spector. Phil Spector goes and just completely does all that crazy Phil Spector stuff, you know.
Yeah, he gets all Phil Spector on the damn thing.
Big wall of sound thing going on there, and he makes this, like everybody kind of like disowns the record in a way anyway. I mean, Paul McCartney didn't want this. He just wanted to do the basic thing that the Beatles did. You bring in Phil Spector, he does this knob twirling and stuff, and it's all stuff that he was known for. Phil Spector was the guy who invented that sound back like in the late 50s and the 60s.
Yeah, late 50s, early 60s. Yeah, I mean, dude, the record itself. Okay, have you heard "Let It Be" the naked version? Have you heard that?
Yes, I have.
That is so much better.
It's a stripped down version with a different running order, and it does sound better. And also, they apply some new techniques to the sound mix these days, because I think the record came out in 2008 or something.
2003, actually.
2003,
and because it was signed off on. Harrison did sign off on it before he died.
I guess he did. I mean,
he did. Harrison did sign off on it because Lennon had already passed. I don't think Paul gave two shits about Yoko to even care to ask her. God bless him for it. He just went.
And Ringo
Harrison.
Does whatever Paul tells him to do.
Exactly. Ringo does whatever he gets told.
Ringo is like Dean Martin to Paul's Frank Sinatra. He does whatever the hell Frank wants him to do, baby. You know. So,
you know what? Ringo's a talented fucking guy.
He's talented, but shit. I mean, like, it's like the one thing you really gather from there is a myth that this movie will be re-released this year, digitally.
Anniversary. 50th anniversary.
Yes, and that's why this episode is out now at this time, is because this is the 50th anniversary of the Beatles breakup. And the Beatles break up when Paul decides they've broken up, because everybody broke away from the band. Ringo was the first to quit the band in 1968 when they were working on the White Album. And then he came back and they all apologized or something, because, they treated Ringo like shit. They basically smacked him around. He was the little guy, right?
They did. He was, for all intents and purposes, he was a hired fucking gun.
Yeah, he was, because Pete Best was the original drummer, but Brian Epstein didn't think Pete Best was a good suit visually with the band, so he got rid of Pete Best and brought in Ringo, because Ringo was very popular, because he was with another band called, I think, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, and he was just a popular guy, so they brought him in. The Beatles was a manufactured band, by the way. They were not this organic thing. They were as manufactured as the Monkees. They were
but you know what's sad? I'd say me and my dad. This is the one thing we always agreed on when they started getting organic. I agree with you. Yes, they were like put together, all this other stuff. I mean, with the exception of Lennon and
Lennon and McCartney were a songwriting team, and they knew each other for a long time.
With that lone exception, when they started getting like super fucking serious, that's when the music started taking a fucking nosedive.
Well, we've talked about this before because you were the one who said that you didn't like everything post Rubber Soul. Is that what you said?
Well, you know what? I'm going to change that stance a little bit. I'm going to say post Revolver.
Because the thing about it, Revolver is my favorite of the Beatles records. To me, it's the perfect homogenization of what they had been and what they were becoming. I do like some of that stuff. I like Sgt. Pepper. I like a little bit of it. I like the White Album a lot, and Abbey Road is a record that me and my wife both enjoy. We love everything about Abbey Road. I do really like Abbey Road. I mean, like I'm changing the older I'm getting, the more of my stance is changing on the Beatles. But I can honestly say I just don't like Sgt. Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour. I agree with you when you talk about all the drug stuff and all that stuff. Opening your mind and taking acid and having a really good time. It's just like it's weird. It's not conducive to a creative environment when you're high off your balls.
Well, I will say this though, and I'm not going to lie to you. You better believe I got stoned off my ass last night before I watched this movie.
Okay. Yeah, but they look stoned, don't they?
If I'm going to have to listen to every song from Let It Be, I'm going to be high as fuck. I don't care.
But you look at them and they're kind of fucked up too. Now,
oh God, are they fucked up, dude? Like,
you know who's really fucked? Lennon is fucked up. Yoko fucking Ono is in every shot. She looks completely smacked off her ticker.
No, that's actually not true. And this is me looking at it from someone they minimized Yoko. I think.
You think because she's like, for me, Yoko in this movie is like a big black cloud in the studio.
Yeah, cancerous tumor when she's in the fucking thing, and it's terrible.
And they feel of them feel uncomfortable.
Every shot I see her, and I'm like,
except for Lennon. So Lennon doesn't feel uncomfortable, but the rest of them, all three of them, are like, what the fuck is this doing in our studio? Right? What the fuck is this doing in our studio when I'm trying to do the long and winding? Stop staring at me, Yoko. You fucking bitch.
I mean, the funny shit is Paul McCartney's adopted daughter is running around in the studio, and everyone's jamming and happy. The second Yoko's in there,
I know. That was really cute too. I mean, I thought that was really adorable that Linda had this daughter, because I thought that was, I was watching it with Bronwyn and I was like, is that him and Linda's daughter? And he's like, no, that's Linda's daughter from her previous marriage. Paul adopted her. He loves her. Of course, what's not to love about? And it's so weird too, because Paul McCartney really doesn't want this movie released because he's afraid he looks like a douchebag in it, and I think,
dude, he looks, let me tell you something. Watching this movie, I will tell you this right now, there is a reason Paul McCartney is my favorite fucking Beatle. Watching that movie, all it did was solidify it.
McCartney he's the guy. His music, Lennon had some very interesting, provocative, wonderful songs in the repertoire, but I think McCartney's music paid the bills. It was McCartney's music that kept the lights on, And he is like a musical genius. The guy is just sitting there at the piano, noodling around with Ringo, watching him and everything. Ringo looks depressed throughout the whole fucking thing,
dude,
too.
Ringo in the background just looks like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, why am I watching these two dopers fucking do this shit? And I think he was more mad at John than anything else.
Yeah, I would say, because I think it was around the Revolver or Rubber Soul period. You remember Paul's song "Paperback Writer"? Yeah. Now Paul wrote that song because he bought a bookstore, and it was called the Indica Bookstore in London. And at the opening of the bookstore is where John Lennon met Yoko Ono, and where John Lennon decided to end his marriage because of Yoko Ono. It's like a very weird thing. John. Okay, man, I hate to be one of those guys. You're probably going to be one of them too. I never really cared for John Lennon. I don't think John Lennon was. No, he did have some good compositions within the Beatles. I don't care for his solo shit whatsoever. There's a couple of songs I like of his that are solo, but for me, like all that, I'm not into Imagine is. I hate that song.
I'll tell you now, Instant Karma and Imagine. That's like about it.
For you?
Yeah, for me, those are like the only two solo Lennon songs.
For me, I like I like Instant Karma. I like Cold Turkey. I like How Do You Sleep? I love that song, even though that's an attack on Paul McCartney, you know. And let me see. I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. I like that song too. Jealous Guy, you know. I didn't mean to harm you. You know, that was Beatles. That was actually Beatles material, but he rewrote it, you know. I didn't mean
his music was a little too psychedelic for my liking.
Oh,
so
and
it was just...
even the song that he is about Yoko, I love that song. The one that goes, "Oh Yoko, I'd love to turn you on." There's some stuff there that Lennon. There is some really great stuff that Lennon wrote, but like I said, his music didn't really like sell. It didn't pay the bills, as it were. But it did give the Beatles this unique thing. Paul is just a great. He could like what Sting said. He could shit a pop song, you know.
Exactly. I mean, the dude, fucker's a genius. Even I'm not the biggest Beatles fan, but I know a lot about him. I was gonna save this, but I might as well say it. I am not the biggest fan of the '60s British music invasion. I'm really not. I mean, and
we're talking. It's not just the Beatles. It's like the Who, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin.
The Who, the Stones. Like, I'm not big on those bands, and it's like, I respect the fuck out of them. I'm just not gonna fucking get my Spotify out and fucking play this shit. Like, I'm gonna listen to '70s music. I have
a love of the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and the Who. Love the Who. Love hearing the Who, because the Who are very, you know, violent and loud, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to pick anything, it's like Zeppelin and the Who like sound like the most American, like they're very Americanized British music. But then when you got the Beatles and the Stones, it's like it's very British, you know, very British.
Very British. Well, the Stones were they were influenced by blues, though. They were Chicago blues, but they were being
they were straight. Yeah, they were blues. I mean, then Beatles were
band.
They had blues.
But even the Stones made fun of this record. Their best, in my opinion, my favorite Rolling Stones album is Let It Bleed, and because it's a fantastic record. It has a whole bunch of shit on it. It's awesome.
Sticky Fingers, dude.
You like Sticky Fingers?
Sticky Fingers.
I like a lot of the Stones 70s stuff, but that's why it leads back to my first question for you, which wasn't this the best time for the Beatles to break up?
It probably was, because they all needed to go off and do their own shit, man. They just couldn't function together anymore.
And they did.
You're watching this band literally fall apart in front of you for 80 minutes.
They really, I mean, like, I don't know who came up with the idea. Maybe it was Paul's idea as a way to keep the band together for some amount of time.
Because it was a whole. I did a little research. They wanted to do like this fly on the wall approach. This was originally supposed to be a TV project,
right?
And then it had like so many hundreds of hours of shit that was shot, and you know, when it was all said and done, the producers looked at it. It's like, we can't do nothing with this shit. Nobody wants to watch this crap. And then in order to save face, they re-edited it all into one movie. And then I remember the original cut had a shitload of John and Yoko, and they edited it all out.
Yeah.
Like they kept very little of John and Yoko. Like this movie is very Paul-centric.
It is very Paul, because Paul is, well, you know, it may be Paul because of the editing, but I think it was also Paul because Paul was the first one in and the last one out in the studio every day. So he was always working, always constantly just creating stuff. And the guy still had stuff to create for years after, for decades after. And he's still working today.
John was criticizing George all the time. Like,
yeah.
George fucking quit during the making of it.
Yeah, George was third to quit. John had quit, like, around the time he had his car accident with Yoko and everything, and he came back for Abbey Road or something, right? And then Paul was the one who said the band was over, because he wanted to release his solo album, and he wanted to get it out there a couple of weeks before Let It Be came out. So that's when everybody took it seriously. So everybody took it seriously. I mean,
that's why that's why George brought in Billy Preston.
George brought in Billy Preston so that everybody would behave themselves in front of this guy. And they did for the most part, but they were so well behaved, they didn't communicate with each other. Billy Preston was fantastic. He's great. Oh, he's wonderful in the movie too, because he's totally jamming on everything they're doing.
Yeah,
he's like, I don't understand what the fuck your guys' problem is. This music is awesome, man. I'm jamming out to it. You know?
But here's the end game. Here, like, the end result was always this. They butted heads making the music, right? But when they got it done and they started playing it together, then they were happy.
That's
because
why
the hardest part was over. It was creating it, and once you created it, then you can play it in front of people. Well, in this case, they were already 3 years removed from touring at this point.
But they were doing
but
it
at least
live,
they
though.
were happy.
They were doing it live because after they gave up touring, which I'll never understand because I think the giving up of the live touring is part of what killed the band. They gave up touring in 1966, so all the music that they were doing afterward, up until Let It Be, it was all like overdubbed. So they would just come in, do their parts, and leave. Right? They had to all be here for Let It Be, so they did it live, and they did it on the rooftop too, which is what ends the movie. They did a fine job. They really worked well together. The music was fantastic, and it had never occurred to me how much harmonizing there was, and like when I forget. I think it's when Paul is singing "Let It Be," the actual title track from the movie, and everybody's harmonizing together with him. It's a wonderful thing. But
it's great seeing that. I really enjoyed watching that.
And it really makes you kind of appreciate the band on so many levels. Every band that you love, every band that I love, every band that we have a stake in owes a lot of almost everything of what they do to how the Beatles shaped music and how they were able to, adopt any musical form and still continue to exist within that band. Rush, you're a big Rush fan.
Rush
owes
is my all-time
so
favorite
much
band.
to the Beatles
Exactly,
for what
man.
they did.
Without the Beatles, there wouldn't be Rush, because Geddy and Alex have always said John and Paul were their biggest influences.
Yeah.
And everybody can look back and say those were the main influence. But then you look at Rush, look at everyone Rush influenced.
Yeah, that's true.
Rush influenced like anybody and everybody. So, I mean, at least I look at it this way. I may not be the world's biggest fan of the most influential rock and roll band of all time, but at least I'm the biggest fan of maybe like the second or third best rock and roll band of all time.
So, now moving on to the actual movie here. Now, we had this opportunity to see the movie because it was available for a very brief time on YouTube, and I was lucky I was able to grab it before it was taken down again, because Apple is crazy. They're just like Disney. They track down this shit and they take it down immediately, and somebody else tries to put it up and then they take it down again. They're very vigilant about this. It's so weird too. It's a movie that was available on video for a long time, courtesy of Magnetic Video, because it was released by United Artists got the rights.
Right, and I think after Apple got the rights back, then they, buried it.
Right, and this is the crazy story of Let It Be. It was shot full frame, and
16. Well, because remember, shot in full frame because it was meant for TV.
Shot originally in full frame.
Yep, 16 millimeter.
4:3, and then when it was released to theaters, they cut it off on the top and bottom to mask it for a theatrical presentation. So they chopped it right there to make it look like a widescreen. And then it comes, and then it's coming out on video, on Magnetic Video, because Magnetic had a deal with United Artists at the time in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. They chop it again to a 4:3 from that theatrical masking, which cuts it down even more. And then the version that you and I watch is a chopped widescreen version of that image. So, So the one we saw, was getting really close to eyeballs and noses in that whole thing.
But it didn't look half bad. It didn't look half bad.
Yeah, but the problem, the movie. Okay, I've seen restored clips of the movie, and I've seen remastered clips. It's actually a very clean presentation. It looks wonderful. If you can get back to the original. Hey, get back! If you can get back to the original version, you probably have a very clean version of it, but it's kind of a mess in terms of like it's really kind of done in a very it's a very ugly looking movie. Well,
it's like they say, it's fly on the wall perspective.
Yeah, it's like but I feel like you got a bunch of cameras in there and really kind of like, oh, I don't give a fuck, we'll just shoot it. It's like there's no look for there's no taste when it comes to the visual sense of it. It's and also the editing is really jumbled. It's like it's just a collection of scenes, and there's no flow, there's no continuity. Nobody ever says anything at the beginning like, oh, hi, we're doing a movie version of a record, Let It Be, enjoy, or something like that, or at the end, or something like that. It's just sort of a jumble of scenes all put together until we get to the final bit, which is, I guess, the rooftop,
which is the best part of the movie, let's face it.
It's pretty good. There's some bits in there that are a little bit staged. Like, obviously they got these...
Oh, dude, the whole thing was, I mean, come on, dude. Like, all the music, you could tell that music was not being played live.
Actually, what I thought was great though was the people down on the street. You know, like all the old people were like, I don't understand what kind of music this is, and all the young people were like, yeah, this is groovy, man. We're dancing, you know. You know, it's like hey, it's the Beatles. It's like I don't understand why they're doing this kind of music. You know, it's like the old people hate it, the young people love it, right? And,
Right.
And then we have these shots of these cops, and they're obviously some of them are fake. I mean, like they went on the street with their camera. They got some real cops, but then they dress up a couple of people in cop uniforms going into the Abbey Road building, or the Apple Studios building rather, and knocking on the door. Excuse me, you're causing a disturbance. We're gonna have to shut you down. You know, and it's all this. And then they come up and there's arguing. Some of that was staged, obviously.
It was. I think I read an interview. Paul McCartney was like, I was upset that they wouldn't let us continue playing, but I was more upset that they didn't arrest us.
Yeah, he would have loved being arrested.
He wanted to be arrested just for shits and grins, but then he had to wait a couple of years later. He got arrested for pot charges and shit.
Yeah, smuggling hash into Tokyo or something.
Yeah, something along those lines. Fucking smuggling weed, something that's not even harmful. But whatever, man. That is what it is. It's just.
I think the rooftop bit only lasts about 16 minutes, maybe 18 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, 20. Let's just say between 15 and 20 minutes. But it was entertaining, mainly because those songs they played. Those are the ones I really like. Like I love Get Back. I love Dig a Pony. I love Don't Let Me Down. Those are great songs.
Dig a Pony is awesome. I love that song.
Dig a Pony, man. That's like, I hate saying it's like, Let It Be is not one of my favorite Beatles records, but that's possibly like one of my top 5 favorite Beatles songs.
Let It Be is a very interesting song because my wife's kind of an expert on Baptist funeral dirges, you know, like old Negro spirituals, that kind of thing. So she knows a lot about that music. And I was asking her, is this kind of like a spiritual? Does this song sound like a spiritual to you? She's like, yeah, totally. She could totally see like some kind of a Baptist choir singing this song. I think it's a wonderful song. Long and Winding Road is a bit, you know.
Yeah, it's a little rough. That song's a little rough around the edges. Trying to think of some other songs I really like off that.
George Harrison gets 2 songs off of there.
Across the Universe, even though they only do like a little bit of it, I do like that song in general.
Nothing's gonna change my world. The original version of Across the Universe is a better version than the version that appeared on the record. It was something that was part of a charity album for environmentalists or something like that. But the one on Let It Be was kind of slowed down and a little bit weird.
Well, that was again that goes back to Spector. Like, okay, best example where Spector fucked up a good thing. Ramones, Rock and Roll High School. So they originally recorded their original version for the movie,
right?
But then they went in and did the End of the Century album with Phil Spector.
Oh man, End of the Century is almost unlistenable for me.
Yeah, but that version of Rock and Roll High School is fucking atrocious, man. That's
There was also what was that song? This was.
Do you remember Rock
and Roll Radio? Do you remember Rock and Roll Radio? He again with this wall of fucking sound. It's not necessary. You know, the Ramones are always best when it's stripped down, and also Long and Winding Road would have been so much better had it been stripped down to just its basic piano and bass, and instead of this big wall thing. Spector, I think he was fine back in those days of like, you know, be my baby, you know, that kind of stuff, because nobody had done that.
No.
But in the 70s and 80s, Phil Spector was dreadful. And just ask Glenna Clarkson. He was dreadful. Sorry, Phil, had to do it.
Yeah, had to, but I'm telling you, man, that's one man I'm glad to see behind bars, because you know what? We got rid of him for being a murderer. He murdered music as well as people.
And then who plays him in a movie? Al Pacino.
That guy in prison's got a great ass.
We just got made. Okay, motherfucker. So the movie is an interesting little time capsule as far as we have 2 other movies here because my wife got them for her birthday 2 years ago. We have yet to open them, though, and they're Blu-ray versions of Help and Hard Day's Night. And they also did Yellow Submarine, which I did enjoy. It's kind of a trip to watch. You want to get fucked? Yeah, listen, Froelich, get fucked up and watch Yellow Submarine. You will see angels, I guarantee you.
You know what? I watched that movie sober. I'll never do it again.
There is one thing that everybody has to check out if you can find it: The Ruddles, which was Eric Idle's Beatles ripoff thing that he did. All You Need Is Cash. It's an incredible movie, and they do a complete parody of the Let It Be thing. It's called Let It Rot, and the song is called Get Up and Go. And it's a really funny. Oh, and they do a Yellow Submarine sandwich, and the song off of that is called Cheese and Onions. It's really good.
I have not seen the Ruddles in so damn long. I need to find that again. I think it's still available.
You can find it. You could probably find it on YouTube actually, because they're not that insane about trying to cover up the stuff they do. And speaking of Eric Idle, might as well bring it up. Even though it wasn't a Monty Python project, Terry Jones passed away. It was a hard week for those of us who are Monty Python fans. I watched Life of Brian, which was produced by George Harrison. He financed the movie and appears in it for a couple of seconds as a character. It's a wonderful movie, and I know we talked about it before. I talked about my Warner clamshell. Everybody go and see Life of Brian. Grab it, because it is a wonderful movie.
Not the biggest Monty Python fan, but respect.
You really got to see it, and that's probably going to be on my list, too, by the way, just to give you a little inkling.
All right.
It's an incredibly funny fucking film, and had me rolling when we watched it last weekend. So, let it be. That's the movie. That was the final movie, and that was the final.
If you can even call it a movie.
It's a documentary. It's like a weird, loosely associated documentary with no rhyme or reason or flow. Although it did win Grammys and it won an Oscar, I believe.
Yep, for Best Original Score, which all the Beatles won the Oscar for.
Nope, not all of them.
Yeah, that's right.
Ringo did not win it because somebody forgot to put his name on the for your consideration. Ringo just gets forgotten all the time.
That poor fucking guy, man. Great fucking drummer, man. But God,
I'm sorry, it don't come easy. It just don't come easy.
It don't come easy. It don't come easy at all.
All right. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
And as always, don't forget to like, share, and if you like what if you like what you hear, give us a like, share, subscribe.
And on behalf of the other band members, I hope we pass the audition.
And sorry, mates, we've got to pull over. Ringo's got to piss again.
And thanks, Mo. Bye-bye. All right.